Ethan Carter, a millionaire tech CEO, thought his perfect life was complete until a confrontation with a wheelchair user exposed the emptiness behind his success and led him to a community that changed him forever. Before we dive into the story, let's do what Sleepless in Seattle taught us. Share where you're listening from. Comment below. Morning light streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden rectangles across Ethan Carter's imported marble floors. He stands at the edge of his penthouse living room, Italian espresso warming the delicate porcelain cup in his hand. Below, the city stretches like a concrete canvas, buildings reaching toward a cloudless October sky. His phone buzzes against the kitchen counter. Another congratulatory message about the Forbes 40 Under 40 feature, this one from the CEO of a rival tech company. Ethan's lips curve into a practiced smile as he reads the carefully worded praise. The article sits open on his tablet, his own face staring back at him beneath the headline, Tech's Golden Boy, How Ethan Carter Built a Billion-Dollar Empire Before 40. The words should fill him with pride. Instead, they settle like lead in his stomach, heavy with the weight of expectations. He sets down his espresso, the cup clicking against marble with mechanical precision. Everything in its place, every detail curated for maximum effect. A Rothko painting dominates the far wall, its moody blues and blacks purchased not for love of art, but because his interior designer insisted it completed the space. Like the Italian leather furniture and crystal decanters, it's another prop in the carefully constructed stage play of his life. Ethan's gaze drifts to a silver frame tucked among modernist sculptures on the bookshelf. Rachel's smile catches the morning light, frozen in a moment 3 years ago at some charity gala. Her last words echo in his mind, You've built this perfect life, Ethan, but there's no room in it for anything real. He turns away from the photo, fingers sliding across his tablet screen to pull up today's schedule. Board meetings, investor calls, a lunch with the mayor's economic advisory committee. Each hour blocked and color-coded with military precision. A notification pops up, Amanda Walker meeting prep documents. His assistant's efficiency borders on prescience. Ethan opens the attachment, scanning through market projections and competitor analyses as he moves toward his bedroom. The walk-in closet is a temple of bespoke suits and handmade shoes. Ethan selects a charcoal Tom Ford, the fabric whispering against his skin as he dresses. Each movement is practiced, automatic. Winds are not perfectly centered, cuffs precisely aligned, platinum cufflinks catching the light. In the bathroom mirror, he studies his reflection. Steel blue eyes stare back, sharp and focused. At 38, he still maintains the athletic build of his college rowing days, though long hours at the office have softened the edges. His dark hair is expertly styled, not a strand out of place. The morning news plays from hidden speakers as he shaves, market reports and political updates filling the silence. Another tech startup acquired, another hedge fund posting record profits, the familiar rhythm of success and ambition measured in stock prices and market share. His phone buzzes again. This time it's Daniel Marks, his oldest friend and business partner. Saw the Forbes piece. We're celebrating tonight. Morton's at 8. No excuses. Ethan's thumbs hover over the screen. Daniel's interpretations of celebration typically involve expensive whiskey and women who laugh too loudly at mediocre jokes. The thought exhausts him, but his fingers type the expected response. Wouldn't miss it. The elevator arrives silently when he presses the button, its mirrored walls multiplying his reflection into infinity. Ethan straightens his tie, a habitual gesture. Each version of himself performs the same movement, an army of successful men preparing for battle. In the private garage beneath the building, his Aston Martin waits in climate-controlled comfort. The engine purrs to life, its gentle vibration more familiar than a lover's touch. Through the windshield, he watches early morning light paint the concrete pillars in shades of gray. Traffic parts around his car like water around a stone as he navigates toward downtown. Radio voices discuss market trends and emerging technologies, familiar background noise to thoughts that drift despite his best efforts to focus on the day ahead. Rachel's words surface again, unwanted. You're so afraid of being vulnerable that you've built walls even you can't climb. He adjusts the radio volume, trying to drown out the memory. Carter Technologies' headquarters rises 50 stories into the morning sky. a monument to ambition in steel and glass. Ethan pulls into his reserved parking space, the one closest to the private elevator. Even here, image matters, especially here. The lobby falls silent as he crosses the marble expanse, employees parting like a corporate Red Sea. Their greetings are perfectly calibrated, respectful but not obsequious, friendly but not familiar. He's trained them well, or perhaps they've trained themselves to survive in his world. Amanda meets him at the elevator, tablet in hand, her copper hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Morning, Mr. Carter. The board's been moved to 10, and the mayor's office called to confirm lunch. Also, Time Magazine wants to do a follow-up piece on the Forbes profile. Push time to next week." Ethan steps into the elevator, Amanda falling into step beside him, and tell PR to coordinate with legal before we commit to anything. Already done. She swipes through her tablet. Your suit fitting is confirmed for 3. The tailor mentioned he's adding extra time since you'll need something for the Chapman Foundation gala. The elevator glides upward, numbers ticking past like a countdown. Ethan watches the city shrink beneath them, buildings reduced to toy-sized abstractions. The gala, he says, more to himself than Amanda. Another evening of performative philanthropy, where the wealthy congratulate themselves on their generosity while networking over champagne and canapes. Sally Chapman specifically requested your attendance. Amanda's tone carries a hint of warning. After last year's incident with their endowment, it would be politically unwise to decline. The elevator doors open onto the executive floor, revealing a landscape of glass walls and modern art. Ethan's office dominates the corner, floor-to-ceiling windows offering commanding views of the city he's helped shape. Anything else? He pauses at his office door, already reaching for the handle. Amanda hesitates, an unusual break in her professional demeanor. Your mother called again. About Thanksgiving. Something tightens in Ethan's chest, a familiar constriction. Tell her I'll have to check my schedule. Mr. Carter. Amanda's voice softens. It's been 2 years since you've been home. The board meeting starts in 20 minutes. He pushes open his office door. Make sure the projection numbers are updated before then. The door closes behind him with a soft click, leaving him alone in his carefully curated kingdom. Ethan moves to the window, looking down at the city sprawled beneath him. From this height, everything seems small, manageable, controllable. His phone buzzes with another congratulatory message, another carefully worded compliment, another reminder of the life he's built, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. The morning sun catches his reflection in the window. Successful, powerful, envied. Everything he's ever worked for stares back at him, a perfect image of achievement. And beneath it all, in the quiet moments between meetings and mergers, a hollow space grows, a void that no amount of success seems able to fill. The intercom chirps. Amanda's voice, professional once more. Board members are arriving, Mr. Carter. Ethan straightens his tie, squares his shoulders. The mask slides back into place with practiced ease. He is Ethan Carter, tech visionary, business titan, success story. The rest, the doubts, the loneliness, the growing sense of disconnection, can wait. They always do. Send them in, he says, and turns to face another day of being exactly who everyone expects him to be. The board meeting unfolds like a well-rehearsed play, each participant knowing their lines and cues. 12 men and women in expensive suits sit around a gleaming conference table, their attention focused on Ethan as he guides them through quarterly projections. Our AI division's growth has exceeded expectations, he says, gesturing to the holographic display hovering above the table. Third quarter revenues are up 38%, with strong indicators for Q4. Numbers dance through the air, profit margins, market share, growth trajectories. The board members nod approvingly, making notes on sleek tablets. This is the language they understand, the metrics by which they measure worth. Amanda appears silently at his elbow, sliding a glass of water onto the table. Her presence is like clockwork, anticipating his needs before he recognizes them himself. She's been with him for 5 years, longer than any of his relationships. The Chapman Foundation Partnership, says Margaret Chen, head of the investment committee. There are concerns about optics after last year's misunderstanding. Ethan maintains his composed expression, though his jaw tightens imperceptibly. The situation was handled. Their endowment has shown remarkable growth under our management. After you strong-arm them into staying, mutters James Peterson, the oldest board member. His wrinkled face carries decades of corporate battles, not all of them clean. I protected our interests, Ethan corrects smoothly. And theirs. The market validated my decision. The room falls silent, weighted with unspoken judgment. Ethan lets the moment stretch, comfortable in the tension. He's earned this power, this authority. Every decision, every calculated risk has led him here. Now, he continues, changing the holographic display with a gesture, about our expansion into quantum computing. The meeting proceeds according to plan. Ethan leads them through proposals and projections, his voice steady, his arguments irrefutable. This is where he excels, in rooms like this, where success is measured in decimals and dollar signs. 2 hours later, the board files out, satisfied with their quarterly review. Ethan remains at the table, scanning through meeting notes as Amanda clears away water glasses and tablets. Your suit fitting is in 40 minutes, she reminds him, and Daniel called again about dinner. Ethan glances at his reflection in the darkened windows. The morning sun has given way to gathering clouds, casting the office in muted gray. Tell the tailor I'm on my way, and confirm with Daniel Morton's at 8. Of course. Amanda pauses at the door. Will you need a car service tonight, given Daniel's usual celebrations? A ghost of a smile touches Ethan's lips, probably wise. She nods and disappears, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the spectacular view. Below, the city pulses with life, people rushing between meetings, chasing their own versions of success. From up here, they look like pieces on a game board, moving according to rules he's mastered. The tailor's shop occupies a discreet corner of the financial district, its window displays suggesting rather than shouting luxury. Inside, the scent of fine wool and leather wraps around Ethan like an old friend. Mr. Carter. Giovanni, the master tailor, emerges from the back room. His Italian accent has softened over decades in America, but his eye for detail remains razor sharp. For the gala, yes, something classic, I think. Traditional, but commanding. Ethan stands on the fitting platform, arms slightly raised as Giovanni takes measurements he already knows by heart. The ritual is familiar, almost meditative. You always come alone, Giovanni observes, pins held between his lips. No girlfriend to offer opinion? Work keeps me busy. The answer comes automatically, practiced as his Windsor knot. Giovanni makes a sound somewhere between sympathy and judgment. Man cannot live by success alone, Mr. Carter. Even perfection needs balance. The words hit closer to home than Ethan would like to admit. He stares at his reflection in the three-way mirror, seeing himself multiplied into infinity, each version perfectly groomed, perfectly poised, perfectly alone. His phone buzzes in his jacket pocket. Another congratulatory message about the Forbes piece, another reminder of his carefully constructed success. The hollow feeling in his chest expands, a void that no amount of tailored suits or business victories seems able to fill. Outside, clouds gather darker over the city, promising rain. Ethan watches them through the shop window, remembering Rachel's words about walls and vulnerability, about the price of perfection. Giovanni works in silence now, pinning and marking with practiced precision. Each adjustment brings the suit closer to perfection, while something inside Ethan feels increasingly askew. The first drops of rain hit the window, distorting the world beyond. Ethan Carter, tech visionary, business titan, success story, watches them fall and wonders why achievement tastes increasingly like ash in his mouth. The rest of the afternoon blurs into a series of meetings and calls, each one a performance he's perfected over years of practice. By the time his driver pulls up to Morton's, the sky has darkened to pitch and the rain falls in sheets. Daniel waits at their usual table, already 2 drinks in and loosening his tie. There's our man of the hour. His voice carries across the restaurant, drawing attention they don't need. Come celebrate properly, you workaholic bastard. Ethan slides into the booth, nodding to the waitress who immediately appears with his usual scotch. The leather upholstery creaks beneath him, expensive and familiar. To the golden boy of tech, Daniel raises his glass, grinning, making the rest of us look bad since college. The scotch burns pleasantly as Ethan takes a sip. Around them, the restaurant hums with the sound of money and influence, deal-making disguised as dinner, power wrapped in casual conversation. The Forbes piece was just PR. This Ethan says, though they both know it's more than that. Everything is more than that in their world. PR that's got every eligible woman in the city asking about you. Daniel winks at a blonde at the bar, who pretends not to notice. Speaking of which, there's someone you should meet. Friend of Caroline's, just made partner at Goldman. Smart, gorgeous, and most importantly, single. Ethan stares into his scotch, watching the light fracture through the crystal. I'm not interested in being set up, Daniel. Still hung up on Rachel? Daniel signals for another round. It's been 3 years, man. Time to get back out there. The name hits like a physical blow, though Ethan's expression doesn't change. Rachel, who saw through his carefully constructed facade. Rachel, who wanted more than he knew how to give. I'm focused on the company, he says, the words hollow even to his own ears. The quantum computing initiative is going to revolutionize the industry, cure cancer, and probably solve world peace. Daniel rolls his eyes. I've heard the pitch, but what about you, Ethan? When's the last time you did something that wasn't calculated for maximum business impact? The question hangs between them, heavy with implication. Ethan's phone buzzes again. Another message, another demand, another piece of the life he's built. I'm exactly where I need to be, he says, but the words taste like lies in his mouth. Outside, the rain continues to fall, washing the city clean. Inside Morton's, Ethan Carter raises his glass and plays his part, while something inside him drowns in silence. The Chapman Foundation Gala demands his presence 2 nights later. Ethan navigates his Aston Martin through the museum district's narrow streets, streetlights gleaming off wet pavement. The rain has finally stopped, leaving puddles that reflect the city's neon glow. A flash of movement catches his eye, metal glinting in the darkness. Too late, he registers the wheelchair emerging between parked cars. His foot slams the brake pedal. The screech of tires is followed by an even worse sound, metal scraping metal. Ethan's hands tighten on the steering wheel as he watches a wheelchair's footrest drag along his car's pristine side panel. Damn it. The curse escapes through clenched teeth as he throws the car into park. The door swings open, Italian leather shoes hitting wet pavement. Oh good, another luxury car owner who thinks compact spaces are beneath him. The woman in the wheelchair doesn't sound apologetic. Her voice carries an edge of frustration that catches Ethan off guard. These spots are marked for accessibility, you know. Ethan straightens to his full height, prepared to demand insurance information. But something in her direct gaze makes him pause. She's younger than he expected, probably early 30s, with sharp features and eyes that challenge rather than apologize. The scratch will need to be repaired, he says, gesturing to the silver line marring his car's midnight paint. The scratch might not exist if you'd parked properly. She maneuvers her chair back, revealing the tight space she's been trying to navigate. But I suppose that would require noticing something beyond your own reflection. Heat rises in Ethan's neck. He's not used to being spoken to this way. Not anymore. Success has insulated him from such direct confrontation. I'll need your contact information. Claire Martin. She pulls a business card from her jacket pocket, holding it out with a slight smirk. Though I suspect my insurance won't cover wounded pride. Ethan takes the card automatically, his retort dying on his lips as she wheels away without waiting for his response. Her chair navigates the uneven pavement with practiced ease, leaving him standing alone with his damaged car and bruised ego. Inside the gala, crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across marble floors. The city's elite mill about in designer formal wear, air kissing and deal-making over champagne. Ethan shares the parking lot story with his usual circle, expecting sympathetic outrage. A wheelchair scratched the Aston? Thomas Lynch nearly chokes on his martini. God, those people think they own the roads these days? Remember when they demanded those special parking spaces? Such a hassle, agrees Sarah Whitman, her diamonds catching the light as she gestures. They're always complaining about access this and accommodation that, as if the whole world should revolve around their needs. The laughter burns in Ethan's ears. He stares into his scotch, seeing Claire's direct gaze reflected in the amber liquid. Something about their mockery feels wrong, like a suit that no longer fits. His phone buzzes. A news alert. The headline stops his breath. Tech industry's disability discrimination problem. Former employee speaks out. Beneath it, a familiar face, Sophia Chen, the software engineer who left his company 3 years ago after her requests for workplace accommodations were repeatedly denied. The article quotes her directly. Companies like Carter Technologies talk about innovation, but they can't innovate basic human decency. When I asked for adjustable desk heights and screen readers, I was told it would disrupt office aesthetics. Ethan's collar feels too tight. He remembers Sophia's resignation letter, her quiet dignity as she packed her desk. He'd convinced himself it was a necessary business decision, maintaining office standards, preventing special treatment. The justifications ring hollow now. Another ungrateful employee crying discrimination, Daniel says, reading over Ethan's shoulder. Remember her? Always wanting special treatment. You were right to hold the line. But Ethan barely hears him. The gala's glittering atmosphere suddenly feels suffocating. He makes his excuses and leaves early, the echo of cruel laughter following him into the night. Days pass in a blur of meetings and obligations, but Claire's words in Sophia's article linger like splinters in his mind. When his driver takes a wrong turn and passes the Heights Community Center, Ethan almost misses the familiar wheelchair on the building's ramp. "Stop the car," he orders, surprising himself as much as his driver. Claire looks up as he approaches, recognition followed by wariness crossing her face. "Mr. Carter, come to report me for assault with a deadly wheelchair?" Aye. For once, Ethan finds himself without a practiced response. Through the community center's windows, he can see people gathered around tables, some in wheelchairs, others using various mobility aids. They're laughing, engaged in what appears to be an art class. "We're teaching digital design skills," Claire offers, following his gaze. "Helping people find creative work they can do from home. Though, I suppose that's not the kind of tech innovation you typically invest in." The comment stings, but Ethan hears the underlying passion in her voice. "Tell me more." Claire studies him for a long moment, as if measuring his sincerity. "Why? So you can add disability outreach to your PR portfolio?" "Because I was wrong." The words surprise them both. Ethan continues, driven by something he doesn't quite understand. About the parking space, about other things. "I'd like to help if you'll let me." "Help requires understanding," Claire says slowly. "Real understanding, not just writing checks and feeling good about yourself." Ethan watches through the window as a young man in a wheelchair helps an elderly woman navigate design software. Their interaction is natural, supportive, free of the artificial polish that defines his usual world. "Then help me understand," he says quietly. Claire's expression softens slightly. "We meet every Tuesday and Thursday. If you're serious, come back tomorrow. Leave the Aston Martin at home." As Ethan walks back to his car, he glances over his shoulder. Claire has turned back to her work, but something has shifted. In the reflection of the community center's windows, he sees not the polished CEO or the Forbes success story, but a man standing at the edge of change, uncertain but somehow more alive than he's felt in years. Cold November wind whips around Ethan as he stands before the Heights Community Center, his Italian leather briefcase heavy in his hand. The building's weathered brick and peeling paint strike a sharp contrast to the gleaming corporate offices he's used to. A wheelchair ramp zigzags up to the entrance, its metal surface dotted with patches of rust. He checks his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than most cars, and straightens his Tom Ford tie. The familiar ritual offers little comfort today. Through the community center's windows, he catches glimpses of people moving about in casual clothes, their laughter muffled by glass. The door creaks open before he can reach for it. Claire sits in her wheelchair, one eyebrow raised as she takes in his bespoke suit and polished Oxfords. "You actually came." Her tone carries equal parts surprise and skepticism. "Though you might want to rethink the Fortune 500 cosplay if you're planning to stay." Heat creeps up Ethan's neck. "These are my normal clothes." That's kind of the problem. Claire wheels backward, making space for him to enter. We're not exactly a boardroom around here. The community center's interior assaults Ethan's senses. Bright posters covering walls, mismatched furniture arranged in casual clusters, the sharp scent of coffee from an ancient machine. A group of volunteers huddles around a table, sorting art supplies into plastic bins. They glance up as he enters, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. "Everyone, this is Ethan Carter." Claire's introduction carries a hint of challenge. He's our new volunteer. A young woman with bright purple hair and a leg brace grins. The rich guy with the scratched Aston? We were taking bets on whether you'd actually show. Sarah, Claire warns, but her lips twitch with suppressed amusement. I'm here to help, Ethan says stiffly, gripping his briefcase tighter. The words feel foreign in his mouth, rehearsed like a quarterly earnings report. Claire studies him for a moment, then gestures to a stack of boxes near the wall. Great. Those art supplies need sorting for next week's workshop. Think you can handle organizing markers by color without calling your assistant? The task is so far beneath his skill set that Ethan almost protests. He runs a billion-dollar company. He makes decisions that move markets. And now he's being asked to sort markers like a kindergartner? But something in Claire's steady gaze stops him. She's testing him, he realizes, waiting to see if the CEO will dirty his hands with menial work. Ethan sets down his briefcase and removes his suit jacket, draping it carefully over a nearby chair. The fabric probably costs more than everything else in the room combined. Where do you want them? For the next hour, Ethan sorts art supplies alongside a volunteer named Miguel, who uses a motorized wheelchair and has more opinions about marker quality than Ethan knew existed. His fingers grow stained with ink as he separates dried-out markers from usable ones, creating neat rows of colors that would make his executive assistant proud. Bet this isn't how you usually spend your mornings, Miguel comments, watching Ethan struggle with a particularly stubborn marker cap. Not exactly. Ethan flexes his ink-stained fingers, wondering if Tom Ford makes suits in washable fabrics. The rich guy's probably more used to signing checks than testing markers, a voice carries from across the room. Sarah again, her tone somewhere between teasing and pointed. Give him a break, Miguel calls back. At least he showed up. Remember that hedge fund guy last month? Lasted 10 minutes before his emergency meeting came up. Ethan pretends not to hear, but the conversation stings more than he expected. Is that what they all think of him? Just another wealthy businessman playing at charity? The thought sits uncomfortably in his chest as he watches Claire across the room, her wheelchair moving smoothly between groups of people as she coordinates activities. She handles it all with an effortless grace that makes his own carefully cultivated leadership style feel artificial in comparison. Where he commands through authority and intimidation, Claire leads through genuine connection. People gravitate to her naturally, sharing jokes and stories between tasks. Lunch break, Sarah announces, wheeling past with a box of pizza balanced precariously on her lap. Even rich guys need to eat, right? The community gathers around a battered conference table, sharing pizza from paper plates. Ethan stands awkwardly at the edge until Claire points to an empty chair. Sit, unless the idea of non-artisanal pizza offends your refined palate. I eat pizza, Ethan says defensively, though he can't remember the last time he had anything that wasn't served on fine china. With golden utensils, probably, Sarah stage whispers to Miguel, who snorts into his soda. Ethan forces himself to take a bite of the greasy pizza, acutely aware of his $1,000 shirt's proximity to potential stains. The conversation flows around him, inside jokes he doesn't understand, references to shared experiences he wasn't part of. He feels like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture, unable to decode its customs. So, Mr. Carter, Claire's voice cuts through his thoughts. What made you decide to grace us with your presence, besides guilt over almost running me over? The pizza turns to ash in his mouth. How does he explain what drew him here? The hollow victory of another magazine cover? Rachel's words about walls and vulnerability? The growing sense that his perfectly curated life lacks something essential? I wanted to help, he says finally, the words inadequate even to his own ears. Help? Claire's eyes narrow. Or ease your conscience. There's a difference. Before Ethan can respond, his phone buzzes. The screen displays his assistant's name, probably about the board meeting he's missing. He silences it with practiced efficiency. Trouble in the corner office? Sarah asks, her tone making it clear she expects him to bolt for the door. Nothing urgent. Ethan sets the phone face down, ignoring the way it continues to vibrate. The act feels like a small rebellion against his usual precisely scheduled life. Claire watches this exchange with an unreadable expression. Well, if you're staying, those supply cabinets won't organize themselves unless inventory management is beneath your pay grade. The challenge in her voice makes Ethan's jaw tighten. He's not used to being questioned, to having his motives examined so openly. In his world, money smooths over uncomfortable questions. But here, in this room full of mismatched furniture and genuine laughter, his usual tools hold no power. "I'll handle it," he says, standing and brushing pizza crumbs from his pants. The motion leaves a grease stain on his trouser leg, another casualty of this strange new world he's stumbled into. As he works through the afternoon, sorting through years of accumulated art supplies and office materials, Ethan catches fragments of conversation that make him pause. A young man in a wheelchair discussing his struggles finding employment despite his computer science degree. An elderly woman with trembling hands describing how art therapy helps manage her Parkinson's symptoms. Each story chips away at the comfortable assumptions he's built his life around. "Not bad for your first day," Claire says later, as the sun slants low through the windows. "Though you might want to reconsider the suit next time. If there is a next time." Ethan looks down at his once pristine clothes, now bearing the battle scars of marker ink and pizza grease. In any other context, he'd consider the outfit ruined. But something about the physical evidence of work done with his own hands feels satisfying in a way his usual victories don't. "I'll be back," he says, surprising himself with how much he means it. Though maybe in something more practical. Claire's smile carries a hint of approval. "We'll see. Actions speak louder than words around here, Mr. Carter, even expensive ones." As Ethan walks to his car, parked properly in a regular space this time, he hears Sarah's voice drift through an open window. $20 says the rich guy doesn't last a week. The words should anger him. Instead, they kindle something like determination in his chest. He's built an empire through sheer force of will. Surely he can prove himself worthy of this community's respect. His phone shows 17 missed calls from his assistant, 3 texts from Daniel about an investor meeting, and an email from his PR team about the latest Forbes article. The familiar pressure of his other life presses in, demanding his attention. But for the first time in years, Ethan finds himself looking forward to something that can't be measured in stock prices or market share. He sends a quick text to his assistant, rescheduling tomorrow's morning meetings. The Heights Community Center's art supply cabinets still need organizing, after all. The rest of the week passes in a blur of contradictions. Mornings spent in power suits and boardrooms, afternoons in rolled-up sleeves at the community center. Each day brings new challenges to Ethan's carefully constructed worldview. He learns that Miguel used to work in software development before a car accident changed his life, that Sarah's sharp humor masks a brilliant mind for organization, that Claire's leadership style, so different from his own, creates a sense of family among the center's diverse community. On Friday afternoon, Ethan arrives at the center carrying a briefcase full of documents instead of his usual phone and tablet. The familiar buzz of activity greets him. Art classes in one corner, a computer skills workshop in another. Claire looks up from her conversation with a volunteer, her expression guarded as she takes in his formal attire. "Mr. Carter," she acknowledges. "Back for more marker sorting?" "Actually," Ethan sets his briefcase on a nearby table, "I had an idea I wanted to discuss, about funding." The room grows quiet. Even Sarah pauses in her task of hanging student artwork, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "I've reviewed the center's financial statements," Ethan continues, pulling out meticulously prepared documents. "With a proper investment, we could expand the programs, upgrade the facilities." "Stop." Claire's voice cuts through his practice pitch. "That's not why you're here." "I'm trying to help," Ethan insists, gesturing to his carefully crafted proposals. What this center needs," Claire interrupts, "is people who understand our community, not another wealthy donor throwing money at us to ease their conscience." The words hit like a physical blow. "That's not what this is." "Isn't it?" Claire wheels closer, her gaze challenging. "You've been here 4 days, Mr. Carter. You've barely begun to understand what we do, what our community needs, but already you think you can fix everything with your checkbook?" Heat rises in Ethan's neck. "I have resources that could make a real difference here. Experience in scaling operations, improving efficiency." "We're not one of your tech startups." Claire's voice carries an edge of frustration. "These are people's lives, not metrics to be optimized. The fact that you think throwing money at us is the solution shows how little you understand what we're trying to build here. Then help me understand, Ethan says, his voice sharper than intended. Instead of assuming my intentions. Your intentions? Claire laughs, but there's no humor in it. Your entire life is built on buying your way out of difficult situations. When was the last time you actually invested yourself? Not your money, not your business expertise, but your genuine time and effort in something that mattered. The question lands like a punch to the gut. Rachel's words echo in his mind. You've built this perfect life, Ethan, but there's no room in it for anything real. I'm here, aren't I? He gestures to his ink-stained cuffs. Evidence of days spent doing manual labor he could easily have paid others to handle. For now, Claire agrees. But the moment things get uncomfortable, you reach for your wallet. It's safer that way, isn't it? Keeping everything at arm's length, measured in dollars and cents instead of genuine connection? Ethan's jaw tightens. He's not used to being challenged like this, like to having his motives dissected so brutally. In his world, money smooths over all obstacles, but Claire's steady gaze demands something his wealth can't buy. What do you want from me? He asks finally, his voice low with barely contained frustration. Time, Claire says simply. Commitment. Proof that you're here for more than just easing your guilt over a scratched car and some bad press. The people in this community have had enough of being someone's pet project or PR opportunity. The accusation stings, mostly because Ethan can't entirely deny it. Hadn't he come here partly to cleanse his conscience? To prove to himself he wasn't the heartless executive his ex-girlfriend accused him of being? Fine, he says, gathering his untouched proposals. No donation, no improvements, just time. That's all we've ever asked for. Claire's expression softens slightly. Clearly, though you might want to invest in some clothes you don't mind getting dirty, there's a paint supply delivery coming next week. As if on cue, Sarah wheels past, a knowing smirk on her face. I hear Walmart has some nice washable options. You know, for us common folk. Ethan watches his carefully prepared financial proposals disappear into his briefcase, feeling strangely off balance. He's built his entire life around the power of money to solve problems. What does it mean when someone explicitly rejects that power? The art class starts in 10 minutes, Claire says, already turning her wheelchair toward the classroom. Make yourself useful and help set up the easels. That evening, as Ethan's driver navigates through rush hour traffic, his phone buzzes with a text from Daniel. Morton's tonight? The usual crowd's talking about that new hedge fund opportunity. The thought of another evening of artificial laughter and calculated networking makes Ethan's stomach turn. His fingers hover over the phone's screen, muscle memory ready to type his usual acceptance. Instead, he finds himself declining, claiming work commitments. The lie sits uncomfortably in his chest, but not as uncomfortably as the thought of pretending nothing has changed when everything feels slightly askew. Through the car window, he watches the city's elite rushing between gleaming office towers and expensive restaurants. Just days ago, he was one of them, focused solely on climbing higher, accumulating more. Now the view seems somehow hollow, like a stage set missing its actors. His driver clears his throat. Sir, we've arrived at Morton's. Ethan blinks, realizing he never changed their usual evening destination. Through the restaurant's windows, he can see familiar faces, CEOs, venture capitalists, the usual players in his carefully curated social circle. Actually, he says, take me home. In his penthouse, Ethan stands before his closet of bespoke suits and designer shoes. The perfectly arranged rows of fabric and leather that once represented success now feel like costume pieces for a role he's not sure he wants to play anymore. His phone buzzes again. Daniel, persistent as always, missed you at Morton's. Everything okay? This isn't about that charity project, is it? Ethan stares at the message, hearing the barely concealed judgment in his friend's words. How does he explain that sorting markers and hanging artwork has somehow felt more real than all their deal-making dinners? Just busy, he types back, the lie easier than trying to bridge the growing gap between his worlds. He moves to his home office, where the latest Forbes magazine sits on his desk. His own face stares back at him beneath the headline about building empires and chasing billions. The image feels like a stranger now, perfectly composed, utterly untouchable, and completely hollow. On his tablet, he pulls up the center's website. Amateur photos show smiling faces and cluttered rooms, so different from his usual corporate world of polished presentations and careful branding. His finger hovers over the donate button before he catches himself, remembering Claire's words about genuine commitment versus easy solutions. A new email notification pops up. His PR team concerned about his recent absences from high-profile events. Your public image requires maintenance, they remind him. These charity endeavors are admirable, but let's not lose focus on what's important. Ethan closes the email without responding, his thoughts drifting to Claire's challenging gaze and Sarah's skeptical smirk. They see through his carefully constructed facade with uncomfortable ease, forcing him to question what really is important. Tomorrow, he decides, he'll buy some clothes that can handle paint stains and marker ink. It's a small step, but maybe that's the point Claire's been trying to make. Real change happens in small moments of genuine commitment, not grand gestures and generous checks. His phone buzzes one final time. Daniel again. Serious talk needed. Lunch tomorrow. Non-negotiable. The message carries the weight of 2 decades of friendship and shared success. Ethan stares at it for a long moment before typing a single word. Fine. The next day, Ethan meets Daniel at their usual table in Le Bernardin. The restaurant's hushed atmosphere and crystal stemware feel surreal after mornings spent among the community center's organized chaos. You're distracted, Daniel says, studying him over the rim of an overpriced wine glass. And it's not the good kind of distracted that leads to billion-dollar ideas. I'm exploring new opportunities, Ethan replies carefully, adjusting his fork to a perfect parallel with the table's edge. At a charity for misfits, Daniel's voice carries a sharp edge beneath its cultured surface. Come on, Ethan. We both know what this is about. You're still carrying guilt over that incident with the disabled employee years ago. What was her name? Sophie? Sophia, Ethan corrects automatically, his jaw tightening. And this isn't about her. No? Daniel leans forward, his expression a mixture of concern and calculation. Because Anderson Corp is watching us closely for that quantum computing partnership. They're traditional people, Ethan. Old money. They're not going to understand their potential partner spending time playing saint at some community center. The words hit their mark with practiced precision. The Anderson deal could revolutionize their company's position in the market. Months of careful negotiation and relationship building have gone into laying the groundwork. My personal time is my own, Ethan says, but his voice lacks its usual conviction. Is it? Daniel's laugh is soft and dangerous. Everything we do is scrutinized, analyzed, judged. You taught me that, remember? When we were building this company from nothing? Perception is reality, you used to say. Ethan stares into his untouched wine, seeing Claire's reflection in its dark surface. Her words echo in his mind. These are people's lives, not metrics to be optimized. The Anderson deal isn't the only opportunity out there, he says finally. No, but it's the best one. Daniel sits back, signaling for another bottle. Look, I get it. You met someone interesting. She challenges you, makes you question things. But is she worth risking everything we've built? The question hangs between them like smoke, acrid and suffocating. Ethan thinks of Claire's quiet strength, of Sarah's sharp wit, of Miguel's hidden talents, of a community that measures worth in something other than dollar signs and market share. I need to get back to the office, he says, standing abruptly. His untouched lunch remains perfectly arranged on fine china. Think about what I said, Daniel calls after him. Some walls exist for a reason, Ethan. But as Ethan's driver navigates through midday traffic, his thoughts drift to the community center's cluttered warmth, to Claire's challenging gaze and unwavering principles, to the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he's finally found something real in a life built on careful artifice. His phone buzzes with another message from Daniel. Anderson's CEO wants dinner next week. Bring a date. Someone suitable. Ethan's finger hovers over the screen before swiping the notification away. The Anderson deal looms like a storm on the horizon, but for the first time in his carefully calculated life, he's not sure if success is worth the price of admission. The community center's afternoon light paints long shadows across mismatched furniture when he arrives. Claire looks up from a grant proposal, surprise flickering across her face at his formal attire. Lunch meeting, he explains before she can comment on his suit. I brought clothes to change into. Her expression softened slightly. The paint delivery's already here. Sure you want to risk your manicure on manual labor? I can handle it, Ethan says, and for once he's not entirely sure if he's telling the truth. Later, as he helps unload heavy boxes of art supplies, his designer watch safely stored away, Ethan catches fragments of conversation that make him pause. Sarah discussing her dreams of starting a graphic design business. Miguel mentioning the software project he can't complete without better equipment. The entrepreneur in him sees opportunities, chances to make real differences in individual lives. But Claire's words about genuine commitment echo in his mind. These people don't need another wealthy patron throwing money at problems. They need something far more valuable and far more difficult for him to give. His phone vibrates in his discarded jacket. Another message from Daniel, probably about the Anderson deal. Ethan leaves it unanswered, focusing instead on Claire's quiet instructions about proper paint storage. The choice looms before him like a fork in the road. The carefully constructed world of power and influence he's built, or this new path of uncertain destination but undeniable authenticity. Sarah wheels past, her ever-present smirk softening as she watches him struggle with a particularly heavy box. You know, she says, for a rich guy, you're not completely terrible at actual work. The compliment, backhanded as it is, warms something in Ethan's chest. It feels earned in a way his Forbes covers and business awards never did. But as the afternoon light fades and his driver waits patiently outside, Ethan knows he can't keep straddling these two worlds forever. Sooner or later, he'll have to choose, and that choice will cost him dearly, one way or another. News travels quickly in their connected age. 3 days later, as Ethan helps Claire organize materials for a job skills workshop, his phone erupts with notifications. The headline hits like a physical blow. Tech giant's hidden scandal. Former employee speaks out. Sophia Chen's face stares up from his screen, dignified despite the years of silence. The article quotes her directly. I loved my job at Carter Technologies, but when my condition required basic accommodations, screen readers, an adjustable desk, I was told it would disrupt the office aesthetic. The message was clear. My disability made me inconvenient. The phone slips from Ethan's suddenly numb fingers, clattering against the community center's worn linoleum. Claire looks up at the sound, her expression shifting as she reads his face. Bad news? She asks, but her tone suggests she already knows. Ethan's voice fails him. How does he explain this moment of karmic justice? This ghost from his past rising to haunt his tentative steps toward redemption? But Claire is already pulling up the article on her tablet, her face hardening as she reads. The silence grows thick between them, heavy with unspoken accusations. Tell me it's not true, she says finally, her voice carrying a weight he's never heard before. Tell me you didn't really prioritize office aesthetics over basic human dignity. Ethan's throat constricts. In the harsh light of Claire's disappointment, his past justifications crumble to dust. The carefully crafted explanations about company culture and maintaining standards die unspoken on his lips. I was different then, he manages, the words tasting like ash. Were you? Claire's question cuts deep. Or were you just better at hiding it? All this time here, was it really about change or just another PR strategy? That's not fair, Ethan protests, but the defense sounds hollow even to his own ears. I'm trying to. To what? Claire's voice rises slightly, drawing attention from nearby volunteers. To ease your conscience? To prove you're not the same person who valued aesthetics over accessibility? Tell me, Ethan, what exactly are you trying to do here? The question hangs between them like a physical barrier. Around them, the community center continues its daily rhythm, but Ethan feels suspended in this moment of reckoning. Sarah wheels closer, her usual smirk replaced by something harder. I knew it, she says quietly. Just another rich guy playing at charity until it gets too real. I'm not playing at anything, Ethan insists, but the words sound desperate even to his own ears. What happened with Sophia was wrong. I know that now. Know it? Claire's laugh is sharp and bitter. You know what else is wrong? Using our community as your redemption story. Did you think a few weeks of volunteer work would wash away years of discrimination? The accusation hits with precision, finding every crack in Ethan's carefully constructed defenses. He wants to argue, to explain how these past weeks have changed him. But Claire's disappointed gaze strips away his usual eloquence. "I trusted you," she says finally, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Despite everything, I actually believed you might be different." The past tense in her words cuts deeper than any angry accusation could. Ethan reaches for her, but she wheels backward, creating physical distance to match the emotional chasm growing between them. "Claire, please." "I think you should leave," she interrupts, her professional mask sliding back into place. "We have work to do here. Real work, not image rehabilitation." Ethan stands frozen, aware of every eye in the room on him. Sarah's disappointment, Miguel's carefully neutral expression, the whispered conversations starting in corners. His carefully built connection to this community crumbles like a sandcastle before the tide. "What can I do?" he asks, hating the desperation in his voice. "How do I fix this?" Claire meets his gaze directly, her eyes carrying a challenge he's not sure he can meet. "Prove it," she says simply. "Prove through consistent, honest actions that you've really changed, that this isn't just another performance for the press. And until then, she gestures toward the door, we have painting classes to prepare for, without an audience." The dismissal is clear. Ethan gathers his coat and briefcase, every movement weighted with the consciousness of watching eyes. His phone continues to buzz with notifications. Probably his PR team trying to contain the growing scandal. At the door, he pauses, looking back at the community he's grown to care for more than he expected. Claire has already turned away, her wheelchair moving smoothly between worried volunteers as she restores order to her domain. "I'll make this right," he says to no one in particular. Sarah's voice follows him out. "Actions speak louder than words, Mr. Carter, especially expensive ones." The door closes behind him with a finality that echoes in his chest. His driver waits at the curb, face carefully neutral as Ethan slides into the back seat. "The office?" the driver asks, already knowing the routine. Ethan stares at his reflection in the car's tinted window. The polished executive gazes back, every hair in place, every crease precisely pressed. But beneath the perfect surface, something has shifted irreversibly. "No," he says finally. "Take me home. I have some thinking to do." The car pulls away from the curb, leaving behind more than just a building. In its rearview mirror, Ethan watches his chance at redemption recede into the distance, wondering if some mistakes truly are beyond repair. Ethan stands at his penthouse windows, watching city lights flicker like fallen stars against the December darkness. His reflection fragments across the glass. Expensive suit, perfect posture, carefully maintained image. But tonight, the familiar mask feels heavy, ill-fitting. His phone sits silent on the marble counter, still displaying Sophia's article. The words blur together, but certain phrases cut through with knife-edge clarity. Systemic discrimination, hostile workplace, performative inclusion. Each accusation lands like a physical blow, impossible to deflect with his usual armor of PR statements and legal threats. He reaches for the crystal decanter, watches amber liquid splash against cut glass. The scotch is older than his company, worth more than some people's monthly salary. The thought makes him pause, glass halfway to his lips. Companies like Carter Technologies talk about innovation, but they can't innovate basic human decency. Sophia's words echo in his mind, accompanied by the memory of her last day. She'd stood in his office, dignity intact despite everything, and said simply, "I hope someday you understand what you're really losing here." He'd dismissed her concerns as unreasonable demands, her departure as a necessary sacrifice for maintaining standards. The scotch burns going down. Behind him, city sounds filter through triple-paned glass. Sirens, traffic, the endless pulse of urban life. His empire stretches across that skyline, glass towers and digital networks built on principles of excellence and innovation. But Claire's voice cuts through the familiar justifications. "Though I suppose that's not the kind of innovation you typically invest in." His phone buzzes. Amanda, efficient as always. "The PR team has drafted responses to Sophia's article," she says, when he answers. "They're recommending we emphasize our current diversity initiatives and..." "No." The word surprises them both. "Sir." Ethan moves closer to the window, pressing his forehead against cool glass. "No more spin. No more carefully crafted statements." Silence stretches across the line. When Amanda speaks again, her voice carries an unfamiliar note of concern. What are you thinking? The New Year's Eve charity event at the community center. The plan crystallizes as he speaks. I need a speaking slot. That's unexpected. He can hear her fingers moving across her tablet. The guest list is mostly local community members, not our usual crowd. The press coverage will be minimal. Good. Ethan straightens, catching his own gaze in the window's reflection. For once, he doesn't immediately adjust his tie. That's exactly what I need. Another pause. Mr. Carter? Ethan? Are you sure about this? The question hangs between them, weighted with years of carefully maintained professional distance. But something in her tone, concern without calculation, steadies him. No, he admits, but I'm doing it anyway. After they hang up, Ethan returns to his usual spot by the window. The city stretches below, a glittering tapestry of light and shadow. Somewhere out there, Claire is probably still at the community center, working late as usual. He imagines her reaction to his planned confession, skepticism, probably. Maybe outright dismissal. The thought nearly breaks his resolve. He's built his life on controlled narratives and calculated risks. Public vulnerability isn't just foreign, it's antithetical to everything he's constructed. His reflection stares back, perfect and hollow. Rachel's words from years ago surface. You've built this perfect life, Ethan, but there's no room in it for anything real. The scotch sits abandoned on the counter as he begins drafting his speech. New Year's Eve transforms the community center. String lights twist around support poles, casting warm shadows across wheelchair ramps and adaptive equipment. The usual fluorescent harshness gives way to something softer, more intimate. Ethan adjusts his cuffs, a nervous gesture he thought he'd abandoned years ago. His suit is charcoal gray, deliberately chosen for its understated elegance. No flashy cufflinks, no designer labels screaming success. Even his watch is simple, leather-banded instead of his usual platinum. Claire moves through the crowd ahead of him, greeting guests with genuine warmth. Her chair navigates the space effortlessly, a natural extension of her presence. She pauses to hug an elderly man using a walker, laughs at something a young woman with a service dog says. The scene strikes him as fundamentally different from his usual charity galas. No champagne flutes or canapes, no subtle jockeying for position or influence. Just people connecting, celebrating, existing without performance. 10 minutes, Mr. Carter. Amanda appears at his elbow, tablet in hand. She's dressed down for the occasion, her usual severe bun replaced by loose copper waves. Are you ready? The question carries weight beyond its surface meaning. Ethan smooths his tie, a gesture that usually centers him. Tonight it feels performative, another habit to break. No, he says honestly, but that's rather the point, isn't it? Amanda's expression softens. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Before he can respond, the microphone crackles to life. Claire wheels onto the small stage, adjusting the stand to her height. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us to celebrate another year of community, growth, and breaking down barriers, both physical and social. Her gaze finds Ethan in the crowd, unreadable but intent. Our next speaker needs no introduction in business circles, though he's relatively new to our community. Please welcome Ethan Carter. The applause is polite but reserved. Ethan climbs the steps slowly, each footfall echoing in his ears. The spotlight feels different from his usual corporate presentations, harsher, more exposing. He grips the podium, scanning the faces before him. Some he recognizes from his volunteer work, others are strangers. All wait with varying degrees of skepticism. I had a carefully prepared speech, he begins, then stops, reaches into his jacket pocket, removes the folded papers, sets them aside. But I think we've all had enough of my careful preparations. The audience stirs. In the front row, Amanda straightens, concerned. 3 years ago, a woman named Sophia Chen asked me for reasonable workplace accommodations, adjustable desk heights, screen readers, basic tools to help her do her job. His voice catches. He forces himself to continue. I denied her requests, not because they were unreasonable or even expensive, but because I thought they would disrupt the aesthetic I'd cultivated, the image of perfection I'd built my company around. The room falls silent. Even the usual rustle of movement stills. I told myself it was about maintaining standards, about treating everyone equally. Ethan's knuckles whiten against the podium. But that was a lie. It was about pride, about fear. about being so focused on appearing strong that I couldn't recognize my own weakness. He finds Claire in the crowd. Her expression remains neutral, but she holds his gaze. Sophia left. She wrote a letter explaining how my actions had hurt her, how they reflected a deeper problem in corporate culture. I had my legal team bury it, use my influence to discredit her concerns. The words taste like ash, but he forces them out. I was wrong, not just about Sophia, but about what strength really means. Whispers ripple through the audience. Some faces show understanding, others remain skeptical. Ethan continues, his voice growing stronger. I'm not standing here asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned that yet. I'm here because the truth deserves to be spoken, especially when it's uncomfortable, because real change starts with acknowledging our failures, not hiding them behind corporate statements and legal settlements. The silence that follows his words feels electric. In the back of the room, a figure shifts. Sophia, he realizes with a jolt. She'd come after all. Their eyes meet briefly before she looks away. Thank you for listening, he concludes quietly. And thank you to this community for showing me what real innovation looks like, what real strength means. He steps back from the podium, surprisingly steady despite the trembling in his hands. The applause that follows is scattered, uncertain. Some people whisper to their neighbors, others simply watch him with thoughtful expressions. Claire wheels forward to thank him, her voice professional. But as he passes her on the way off stage, she murmurs, "That couldn't have been easy." It's not forgiveness or even approval, but something in her tone suggests respect. For now, that's enough. The hallway outside the main room offers temporary refuge. Ethan loosens his tie, letting out a long breath. The sound of conversation and music drifts through the closed doors, life continuing despite his world shifting on its axis. Well? The voice behind him is familiar, though he hasn't heard it in 3 years. That was unexpected. Ethan turns slowly. Sophia stands in the hallway, her posture guarded but not hostile. She's traded corporate attire for casual elegance, success evident in her bearing. Sophia. Her name comes out rough. I didn't expect. Claire invited me. She moves closer, studying him with the same sharp intelligence he once valued in board meetings. She thought I should hear what you had to say. The silence stretches between them, heavy with history. I'm not convinced yet, Sophia says finally. Her voice is measured, careful, but I'll give you a chance to prove you mean it. Relief floods through him, followed immediately by renewed determination. What happened to you was wrong, not just legally or professionally, morally. I see that now. Words are easy, Ethan, but something in her expression softens slightly. Actions matter more. I know, he meets her gaze steadily. I'm committed to making real changes, not just for appearances or PR, but because it's right, because people like you deserve better. Sophia considers this. The tech industry has a long way to go in terms of accessibility and inclusion. Then help me change it. The words come naturally, urgently. Work with us, with the nonprofit. Help us identify where we're failing and how to do better. A ghost of a smile touches her lips. Still thinking big, I see. Some habits die hard. He returns the smile, cautious but genuine. But maybe this time we can use that ambition for something worthwhile. We'll see. Sophia straightens her jacket. I'll be in touch. Don't make me regret giving you this chance. She turns to leave, then pauses. For what it's worth, thank you for finally telling the truth. Ethan watches her disappear back into the main room, her words settling like a weight and a release simultaneously. The evening winds down slowly. Guests filter out in small groups, conversations continuing onto the front steps. Ethan helps stack chairs, ignoring Amanda's raised eyebrow at the unusual sight of her boss doing manual labor. He finds Claire near the entrance, switching off string lights. The glow of city streets spills through the windows, painting shadows across her face. You're on the right path, she says without preamble. But this is just the beginning. I know. Ethan studies her profile, struck by how this woman he barely knows has catalyzed such profound change in his life. Thank you for pushing me to be better. Claire turns to face him fully. I didn't push you to do anything. You chose this because you showed me it was possible. The words come out more vulnerable than he intends. You showed me what integrity really looks like. Something shifts in her expression, not quite softening, but opening. Just don't waste this chance, Ethan. Real change takes more than one good speech. I won't. He holds her gaze, letting her see the truth of his commitment. I promise. The last string light clicks off, leaving them in the gentle glow of street lamps. Outside, the city prepares to welcome a new year. Inside, Ethan Carter stands at the threshold of change, finally ready to build something real. Morning light filters through the community center's windows, casting long shadows across mismatched furniture and worn carpet. Ethan adjusts his sleeve, cotton instead of silk, department store rather than designer. The change in wardrobe feels symbolic, like shedding a skin he's worn too long. The printer's jammed again, Maria calls from the corner desk, her wheelchair positioned at an awkward angle to reach the temperamental machine. Mr. Carter, could you... Just Ethan, he corrects gently, crossing to help. It's taken weeks for the regulars to stop flinching when he enters a room. The Forbes 40 Under 40 CEO now spends his mornings unjamming printers and organizing community outreach schedules. Maria smiles as he kneels beside her chair, showing him where the paper feeds. Her hands shake slightly, multiple sclerosis making fine motor control a daily challenge. 3 months ago, she was another resume in a stack of rejections. Now she's coordinating the center's job placement program. You're getting better at this, she teases as he expertly clears the jam. Remember your first week? When you tried to upgrade us to that fancy automated system? Heat creeps up Ethan's neck. The $50,000 printer sits unused in storage, a monument to his early attempts to solve problems by throwing money at them. Claire had been particularly pointed in her criticism. Our community needs accessibility, not excess. The memory of his first few weeks floods back. He'd arrived in his Aston Martin, still wearing $1,000 suits, trying to revolutionize their operations with expensive technology and grand plans. The community's skepticism had been palpable. It wasn't until he started listening, really listening, that things began to change. A young woman named Sarah had been the first to break through his corporate armor. Born with cerebral palsy, she'd pitched him a brilliant idea for adaptive gaming equipment. Her business plan was handwritten, her market research conducted through social media polls, but her passion and insight were undeniable. She'd made him see the gap between his world of venture capital and the reality of disabled entrepreneurs trying to break into the market. The mentorship applications are piling up, Maria says, pulling him back to the present. She gestures to a stack of folders on her desk. Word's getting out about the program. We've got people applying from 3 states now. Ethan picks up the top application, scanning the carefully typed pages. Another tech proposal, this one for voice-activated home automation systems designed specifically for users with limited mobility. The applicant's qualifications are impressive. A computer science degree, coding experience, ideas that could genuinely disrupt the market. But what catches his attention is the personal statement. I'm not looking for handouts. I'm looking for the same chance everyone else gets. The entrepreneurship program had started as a simple idea during one of his late-night conversations with Claire. She'd been telling him about the barriers her community faced, not just physical accessibility issues, but the subtle discrimination of networking events held in inaccessible venues, investors who couldn't see past disabilities to recognize talent. You know both worlds now, she'd said, challenging him with that direct gaze he'd come to admire. Why not build a bridge between them? So he'd started small, reaching out to his network of investors and mentors. Some had been skeptical, others enthusiastic about the PR potential. But as the first success stories emerged, a web developer with muscular dystrophy landing a major contract, an accountant with visual impairments starting her own consulting firm, the program had taken on a life of its own. Speaking of Claire, he spots her through the office window, deep in conversation with a potential donor. Her hands move animatedly as she speaks, passion evident in every gesture. The sight stirs something in his chest, admiration mixed with a lingering uncertainty about his place in her world. Earth to Ethan, Maria's voice breaks through his thoughts. The mentorship applications need reviewing before lunch. Right? The entrepreneurship program, his first real contribution that Claire actually approved of. Combining his business expertise with the center's mission feels like building a bridge between his old life and this new one. The applications spread across his borrowed desk tell stories of determination. A web developer with cerebral palsy seeking startup guidance, an accountant who lost her sight but not her ambition. Each one reminds him of Sophia, the employee he failed years ago. Yesterday's candidates meeting had been particularly promising. 10 potential mentors from his corporate world sitting down with program applicants to discuss partnership opportunities. The energy in the room had been electric. Ideas flowing, connections forming, barriers breaking down. "These are promising," Claire says from the doorway, making him start. She moves into the room, her wheelchair navigating the space with practiced ease. "Though I notice you flagged the tech proposals first." "Old habits," Ethan admits. "But look at this one. Her business model for adaptive gaming equipment is solid, with the right mentoring, and that's why I'm starting to trust your judgment." Claire's words carry weight. "You're seeing potential now, not just profit margins." The moment stretches between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then Claire's phone buzzes, shattering the silence. Her expression shifts as she reads the message, color draining from her face. "Claire? What is it?" She wordlessly turns the phone toward him. A video plays. Ethan from 3 years ago, immaculate in a custom suit, voice dripping with condescension as he dresses down an employee. The words hit him like physical blows. "If you can't handle a normal workspace, maybe you're not cut out for a normal job." "Rachel," he breathes. His ex-girlfriend's revenge served ice cold and perfectly timed. The video's timestamp shows it's already trending. The comments scroll past like daggers. Typical fake corporate ally. Once a bigot, always a bigot. Wonder how much PR spin this will take to fix. But worse are the ones from the disability community. This is who we're supposed to trust. Knew it was too good to be true. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like," Claire says quietly. But they both know it's exactly what it looks like. Who he was, who he might still be. The center's main room has fallen silent. Through the open door, Ethan sees Maria and others watching the same video on various screens. Their expressions a mix of hurt and betrayal. Sarah, the young entrepreneur whose pitch had helped change his perspective, quickly wheels away when their eyes meet. The carefully built trust of the past months crumbles like sand. His phone explodes with notifications, investors pulling out of the mentorship program, media requests for comment, a particularly cutting email from a disability rights activist. "Your support does more harm than good. Step down before you damage these people further." "My office," Claire commands. "Now." The familiar whir of her wheelchair leads him down the hallway, past bulletin boards covered with community success stories. His own face stares back from a recent newspaper clipping. Tech CEO finds new purpose in nonprofit work. The irony tastes bitter. Claire's office is deliberately accessible. Wide spaces, lower shelves, everything within easy reach. She positions herself behind her desk, the wooden surface between them like a barrier. 3 years ago, she begins, her voice carefully controlled. "That's recent enough to matter, Ethan, and recent enough to make me question everything. I was different then." The words sound hollow, even to his ears. "Were you? Or were you just better at hiding it?" Claire's fingers drum against her armrest, a tell he's learned means she's processing strong emotions. "The man in that video, he's exactly who I thought you were when we first met. Privileged, prejudiced, wrapped in wealth like armor." Through the window, he watches Maria wheel past, her earlier warmth replaced by rigid professionalism. A small group has gathered near the front desk, their hushed conversation punctuated by glances toward Claire's office. The community he'd worked so hard to join now views him as an outsider again. Or worse, a threat. "The program launches next week," Claire continues. "We have 20 entrepreneurs counting on mentorship, on connections you promised to provide. Your contacts are already pulling out. I've gotten 3 cancellation emails in the last hour." His phone buzzes incessantly. Amanda trying to reach him, no doubt with damage control strategies. The old Ethan would have already been calling his PR team, crafting the perfect spin. A text catches his eye. Daniel, his old friend from the business world, "Told you getting involved with them was risky. Time to cut your losses and come back to the real world." The message crystallizes something in Ethan's mind, a clarity about exactly who he doesn't want to be anymore. "I need time. Claire says finally. Time to assess whether your involvement is helping or hurting the people we serve. Time to decide if I can trust that your change is real. Claire, go home, Ethan. Figure out who you really are and what you really want. Because right now, I honestly don't know. The dismissal stings worse than the video's revelation. Ethan stands slowly, straightening clothes that no longer feel like his own. At the door, he pauses. The person in that video, that's not who I am anymore. You help me see that. Prove it, Claire replies simply. Not with words or money or grand gestures. Prove it with choices and actions that cost you something real. The community center feels colder as he walks out, stripped of the warmth he'd grown accustomed to. His phone continues its urgent dance. Amanda's texts growing increasingly concerned. PR team standing by. Should we get ahead of this? Instead of responding, Ethan finds himself driving to the one place he's been avoiding, his old office at Carter Technologies. The building rises like a glass and steel monument to his former self, all sharp edges and calculated impressions. The security guard's surprise is evident as Ethan badges in wearing chinos and a button-down instead of his usual suits. The executive elevator rides smoother than the community center's creaky lift, but the silence feels oppressive now. His office remains unchanged, the Rothko still dominating the wall, crystal decanters catching afternoon light. Amanda meets him at the door, tablet in hand and concern etched on her face. The PR team has drafted 3 possible statements, she begins. We can frame it as no. The word comes out stronger than intended. No more framing. No more careful statements crafted to protect my image. Amanda's eyebrows rise, but she doesn't argue. She's been with him long enough to recognize when his mind is set. Call a press conference, he continues, here tonight, and contact everyone who canceled their mentorship commitments. I want them all to hear what I have to say. Ethan, Amanda's voice softens. Are you sure? Once you do this, there's no taking it back. He looks out at the city sprawling below, remembering his first view from this office. He'd felt invincible then, above it all. Now he understands the cost of that altitude, the disconnection, the lost humanity. I'm sure it's time to come down from the tower. The press conference comes together with typical corporate efficiency. By 7, the company's atrium fills with journalists and cameras. Ethan spots familiar faces from his social circle, their expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed satisfaction at his fall. The mentors who'd withdrawn their support sit in the front row, expensive suits and carefully neutral expressions marking them as members of his former world. Behind them, he recognizes disability rights activists and bloggers who've been critical of his involvement with the community center. Rather than using the podium, Ethan sits in one of the standard office chairs, bringing himself level with the seated press. The symbolic gesture isn't lost on the photographers, their cameras clicking rapidly. The video you've all seen, he begins, shows who I was 3 years ago. A man so focused on success that he forgot about humanity, who valued image over impact, profits over people. The room stills, reporters' pens hovering over notepads. This isn't the carefully crafted statement they expected. I could try to explain it away, tell you I was under pressure, that I've changed, that it doesn't reflect my true values, but the truth is simpler and harder. I was wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong. Through the glass walls, Ethan spots Claire's wheelchair entering the atrium. She positions herself at the back, face unreadable in the dim light. Maria is with her, along with Sarah and several other entrepreneurs from the program. The past few months at the community center have taught me more than the previous decade in this building. I've learned that true leadership isn't about power or position. It's about service. About seeing people for who they are, not what they can do for you. He leans forward, making eye contact with various reporters. I'm not asking for forgiveness or understanding. I'm asking for the chance to prove through actions that change is possible. Starting tonight, I'm announcing a nationwide expansion of our entrepreneurship program funded entirely from my personal resources. The announcement sends a ripple through the crowd. In the back, Claire's posture shifts slightly. To every person I've hurt through my ignorance and prejudice, I'm sorry. To every person who's been denied opportunities because people like me couldn't see past our own privilege, I'm sorry. And to everyone watching who might recognize themselves in that video, I challenge you to join me in doing better. Questions erupt from the press corps, but Ethan focuses on Claire. She wheels forward slowly, the crowd parting before her. Maria follows, her expression softening as she watches the reactions of those around them. Bold move. Claire says when she reaches him, voice pitched low beneath the clamor of questions. But you realize this puts even more pressure on the program to succeed? I know. Ethan meets her gaze steadily. That's why I need you to keep holding me accountable. Keep pushing me to be better. A ghost of a smile touches Claire's lips. You're starting to sound like someone I can trust again, she says carefully. Don't make me regret it. The words carry both warning and hope, a foundation to build on if he's brave enough to try. Around them, cameras flash and reporters call out questions. But for Ethan, the only audience that matters is the woman before him, offering a second chance he's finally ready to earn. Snowflakes drift past the community center's windows, catching the glow of newly strung Christmas lights. Ethan stands in the entrance hall, watching volunteers transform the space. Garlands of fresh pine weave between twinkling strands, their scent mixing with cinnamon and nutmeg from the kitchen. In the corner, a massive Fraser fir stretches toward the ceiling, its branches still bare. His phone buzzes, another message from the board about quarterly projections. Ethan silences it without looking. Tonight belongs to something more important than profit margins. The tree decorations are ready. Claire wheels up beside him, a box of ornaments balanced in her lap. Her eyes spark with warmth as she surveys their progress. Though I still think you went overboard with all this. Christmas Eve deserves a proper celebration. Ethan takes the box, careful not to disturb her balance, especially this one. Volunteers move through the space with practiced efficiency, many of them regular members of Claire's nonprofit. Marcus, a former tech worker who lost mobility after a car accident, directs the lighting setup from his wheelchair. Sarah, who was born with cerebral palsy, arranges centerpieces with meticulous care. Each person contributes their unique skills, creating a symphony of purposeful activity. Ethan's gaze drifts to the small velvet box in his coat pocket. His fingers brush against it, a gesture that's become almost compulsive over the past week. The weight of it grounds him, a constant reminder of how far he's come and how much further he hopes to go. Mr. Carter? Amanda appears at his elbow, tablet in hand. Even on Christmas Eve, his assistant's efficiency remains unshakable. The caterers need approval on the final menu, and the sound system still needs testing. Also, Sophia called to confirm she'll be here. The mention of Sophia's name sends a familiar ripple of tension through his shoulders. Their reconciliation is still new, fragile as a soap bubble, but her presence tonight feels necessary, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Tell the caterers to proceed as planned. Ethan hands Amanda the box of ornaments. And make sure there's a ramp for the temporary stage. We can't have any accessibility oversights tonight. Claire catches his eye at that last comment, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She remembers, as he does, their first encounter, his car parked carelessly across accessible spaces, her wheelchair scratching his precious Aston Martin. The memory no longer stings. Instead, it feels like the beginning of a story he couldn't have imagined then. The guest list? He asks Amanda. Everyone's confirmed. Board members, major donors, nonprofit staff, and volunteers. She scrolls through her tablet, plus representatives from 3 disability advocacy groups and the Tech Accessibility Council. Perfect. Ethan straightens his tie, a habit that persists despite trading his usual designer suits for more approachable business casual. Let's make sure everyone feels welcome. As Amanda moves away, Claire reaches for his hand. Her touch still sends electricity through his skin, even after months together. You're nervous, she observes. Terrified, he admits, the word coming easier than it would have a year ago, but the good kind of terrified, like standing on the edge of something important. You've faced tougher crowds. Remember that investor panel last month? This is different. Ethan watches Marcus adjust a string of lights, his movements precise despite limited mobility. These people matter more than any investor ever did. Their opinion of me, your opinion of me. Claire squeezes his hand. They already see the change in you. So do I. Before he can respond, a commotion at the entrance draws their attention. Sophia Chen stands in the doorway, snowflakes melting in her dark hair. She looks different from the last time she worked at Carter Technologies. More confident, her posture straight and unapologetic. The sight of her still triggers a flood of memories. Her repeated requests for accommodations, his dismissive responses, the quiet dignity with which she packed her desk that final day. Sophia? Claire wheels toward her, arms opening for an embrace. Thank you for coming. Ethan hangs back, giving them space. The two women have formed their own bond over the past months, built on shared experiences and mutual respect. Watching them together, he feels the familiar ache of regret mingled with hope. The place looks amazing, Sophia says, unwinding her scarf. Her gaze finds Ethan, carrying the weight of their shared history, very different from the Carter Technologies holiday parties. That's the idea, Ethan responds, stepping forward. Though I hope you'll find more has changed than just the decorations. A moment is between them, heavy with unspoken words. Then Sophia nods, a small gesture that feels like absolution. I already have. The next hour passes in a blur of final preparations. Ethan moves through the space, checking details of greeting early arrivals, ensuring every aspect meets his exacting standards. But unlike the perfection he once demanded in his corporate life, this attention to detail serves a different purpose. Each element is chosen to make guests feel welcomed, valued, seen. Amanda finds him adjusting the podium height on the temporary stage. Everything's ready, she says softly. And Ethan? The use of his first name, rare from his usually formal assistant, makes him turn. I'm proud of you. The words catch him off guard. In all their years working together through IPOs and acquisitions and countless victories, she's never said that. He realizes with sudden clarity that it matters more than any professional achievement ever did. Thank you, Amanda. He straightens, squaring his shoulders, for everything. The community center fills with guests as evening settles in. The transformation is complete. Twinkling lights cast a warm glow over elegant table settings, while garlands and ribbons add tasteful holiday charm. The massive Christmas tree stands proud in its corner, ornaments catching and reflecting light like captured stars. Ethan watches from near the stage as Claire works the room, her natural warmth drawing people in. She pauses to chat with Marcus about his new web development project, laughs at a joke from Sarah, introduces potential donors to program participants with easy grace. In her element, she shines brighter than any of the holiday decorations. The velvet box weighs heavy in his pocket. Soon, he thinks. Everything in its time. Your proposal speech ready? Daniel appears beside him, looking uncomfortable in the casual atmosphere. His longtime friend and business partner has made an effort to understand Ethan's transformation, even if he doesn't fully comprehend it, as ready as it'll ever be. Ethan's hand finds the box again. Though I'm starting to think all the practiced words don't matter as much as the truth behind them. Daniel shakes his head, bemused. You really have changed, haven't you? The Ethan Carter I knew would have workshopped that speech with focus groups. The Ethan Carter you knew was more concerned with appearance than substance. He watches Claire help a young girl in a wheelchair reach an ornament on the tree. I'd rather be real than perfect now. The hour approaches. Guests find their seats, conversations settling into anticipatory quiet. Ethan moves toward the stage, each step carrying the weight of past mistakes and future promises. The spotlight feels different from his usual corporate presentations, warmer, more intimate, more consequential. His fingers brush the microphone, testing. The room falls silent, all eyes turning toward him. In the front row, Claire watches with quiet intensity. Beside her, Sophia sits straight-backed and attentive. The moment stretches, pregnant with possibility. Ethan takes a deep breath, letting go of his prepared speech. The words that come are simpler, truer. A year ago, he begins, I thought I had everything figured out. Success meant stock prices and market share. Worth was measured in square footage and luxury cars. I had built exactly the life I thought I wanted, polished, profitable, and completely empty. The silence deepens. In the audience, he sees understanding in some faces, skepticism in others. He continues, voice steady. Then I met someone who showed me what real value looks like. Someone who taught me that true success isn't about what you have, but who you become. someone who had every reason to write me off as another entitled CEO, but instead showed me the power of second chances. His gaze finds Claire. Her eyes shine in the soft light, a mixture of emotion he's still learning to read. Claire Martin changed my life by refusing to accepting less than authenticity. She showed me that real strength isn't about power or control. It's about having the courage to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to keep growing even when it's uncomfortable. Ethan steps away from the podium, moving toward the Christmas tree. Its lights cast patterns across his face as he turns to face the room. I stand here tonight, surrounded by people who have taught me more about resilience and dignity than any business school ever could. People like Sophia Chen, who had the courage to speak truth to power and the grace to allow for redemption. Sophia's expression softens, the last traces of wariness fading from her features. This community has shown me what it means to build something meaningful, not just successful, but truly valuable. You've welcomed me, challenged me, inspired me to be better than I ever thought I could be. Ethan reaches into his pocket, fingers closing around the velvet box. The room holds its breath. Claire. His voice catches slightly as he moves toward her. You once told me I had built walls even I couldn't climb. You were right. But you showed me how to tear them down brick by brick until I could finally see what was on the other side. He kneels beside her wheelchair, box open in his trembling hands. The ring catches the light, elegant but not ostentatious, chosen for meaning rather than show. I'm not asking you to complete me. You've taught me that we have to be whole on our own before we can truly be together. Instead, I'm asking if you'll build something new with me, something real, something meaningful, something that matters. Claire's hands grip her wheelchair's arms, knuckles white. Her eyes never leave his face. Claire Martin, will you marry me? The silence stretches, electric with anticipation. Then Claire moves, one hand reaching toward his face. Her touch is gentle, grounding. You really have changed, she whispers, voice thick with emotion. Yes, Ethan. Yes. The room erupts in applause and cheers as he slips the ring onto her finger. Nearby, Sophia wipes tears from her eyes. Even Daniel looks moved, his usual cynicism nowhere in sight. Claire pulls Ethan close, her kiss tasting of joy and promise. When they break apart, she's laughing through tears. I hope you know what you're getting into, Mr. Carter. For the first time in my life, he says, I absolutely do. The celebration shifts into high gear. Music fills the air as guests move to congratulate the newly engaged couple. Sophia approaches, her smile genuine. I never thought I'd see this day, she admits, embracing Claire. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she hugs him too. But I'm glad I was wrong about you. So am I, Ethan says quietly. Your forgiveness means more than you know. Sophia straightens, businesslike suddenly. Well, since we're having moments of truth, I've been thinking about your offer to collaborate on expanding the nonprofit's programs. Claire leans forward, interested. You're considering it? More than considering. Sophia pulls out her tablet, switching into presentation mode. I've drafted some ideas for integrating accessibility training into tech education programs. If we combine Claire's community connections with Ethan's business network. Ethan listens as she outlines her vision, each word reinforcing the rightness of this new path. This is what real success feels like, not just making money, but making a difference. The evening winds down gradually, guests departing into the snowy night with warm wishes and hopeful smiles. Ethan finds himself by the Christmas tree again, watching Claire bid goodbye to the last volunteers. Ready to head out? He asks as she wheels over. I thought we could take a walk. Well, a roll through the park. The snow's letting up. Claire raises an eyebrow. More surprises planned? No more surprises. He helps her with her coat. Just us, the snow, and whatever comes next. They emerge into the winter night, snow crunching under wheels and feet. The park across the street gleams white and pristine, Christmas lights twinkling in the trees. In the distance, church bells begin to chime midnight. Small town Christmas magic, Claire teases, remembering his initial disdain for such simple pleasures. Who would have thought it would win over the great Ethan Carter? He laughs, the sound free and genuine. I seem to recall someone telling me that real joy doesn't come with a price tag. They pause beneath a snow-laden tree, its branches creating a canopy of white above them. Claire's ring catches the light of a nearby lamppost. sending rainbow refractions dancing across the snow. "This is only the beginning," Ethan says softly, taking her gloved hand in his. Claire's smile warms the winter night, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Around them, snow continues to fall, each flake a promise of fresh starts and new possibilities. The old Ethan Carter would have checked his phone by now, worried about markets and meetings. But this Ethan stands in the quiet night, holding the hand of the woman who taught him to see beyond success to significance. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that his transformation is real and lasting. But for now, in this perfect moment between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, everything is exactly as it should be. The church bells finish their midnight song, the final notes fading into peaceful silence. In their wake, two people who started as strangers stand together in the snow, their paths merged into a single journey forward. Not perfect, but real. Not flawless, but true. And in the end, that makes all the difference. Thank you so much for watching and listening to our story. Your time and support mean the world to us. If this video resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. Your engagement helps us grow and continue sharing meaningful stories. See you in the next video.